day, so there'll be some
Good morning, everyone. Oh, I'm sorry.
Good morning. Good morning. Did everyone join?
Thank you for coming on the last Thursday of July. Aren't we glad we came today and not last Thursday? Again, thank you. My name is Greg Paulson. I'm the president of NYARM, and I welcome all of you and thank you all for being here. I wish that you will all stay to the end. We have refreshments and we have lunch. Right before lunch, I am going to give you some legislative updates. Have no fear. All the branches of government are here and are working to our detriment. With that, I would like to turn the floor over and the program over to one of the best executive directors that I know, Margie Russell.
For the sake of our viewers out on YouTube, this is our summer casual program, so just want to alert our worldwide audience. I'm going to give a quick introduction about the speakers. We have Tom Riley, who is a battalion chief with the fire department, who teaches this all the time. We have Peter Karras, who is with the Durst organization, and he teaches this part of the time, but lives it all of the time. And Alex Weiss, an engineer who thinks about it all of the time. And so with that, we're going to turn it over to them.
Good morning, everybody. I wish everybody doing this morning. As Margie mentioned, I'm Peter Karras, working currently with the Durst organization. I've worked with them for the past 18 years. I am currently assigned at the World Trade Center, the so-called, formerly known the Freedom Tower, and my function there is the assistant property manager. So we are here today to give you a quick overview of the regulations which have changed in regards to supers, handyman, building engineers who need to obtain their Standpipe sprinkler system certifications. As you may be aware, you may or may not be aware, the regulations for the fire department have changed simply because New York City decided to adopt the NFPA code number 25, standard number 25. As such, the multitude of new regulations have been issued and implemented, and it has become sort of difficult for a lot of people to pass the fire department exams. So the goal of today's meeting is to give you an overview of what have changed, what's new, and what it takes now to pass the test. Again, the two most common tests that our supers and handyman and building engineers have to take are the S12, citywide sprinkler system maintenance, and S13, that's for standpipe system. There's also S14, a multitude of other licenses. All of that information, by the way, is easily available on the fire department website, www.ny.gov, under the certificates of fitness. You can simply look it up on that tab. That being said, we'll again be talking about the regulations. So, as I said earlier, the regulations have significantly changed. And again, that's because of the NFPA Standard 25. The regulations are much more complex now, and there are many, many more items that now have to be tested and inspected and maintained as per that code. So I'll let Alicia go into this a little bit more detail right now.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tom Riley. Like Margie said, I'm the battalion chief with the FDNY, and I teach with New York Fire Consultants. In the back on the table, I put some guides here, which is their personal life safety guidebooks. It's they're good little tips on how to get you going. If there's all different areas here, and the back is that's on the table back there. Like Peter was saying, a lot of the laws, codes have changed. This goes back to September 11th. The 2008 code came about, you know, tragedies of that day. Because of that, things are stricter, it's more important. As far as the codes, they adopted in 2008, the new code came out, NFPA 25, edition 2002. There's new exams for different types of testing you take. So before, when you had a certain CFF or a standpipe or sprinkler, where you had one, now you're going to need can't hear? I'm sorry. Okay, you're going to need a separate certificate of fitness for the standpipe and for the sprinkler. Okay. So the current CFS was up until January of 2012. From that forward, you have to take a new exam. If the fire department comes on scene and you are not current, you're going to get a notice of violation or a violation of the fire department, which of course is going to result in a fine. What I'll do is, Margie put in the book there, she put a breakdown of the new information that you need.
Page 12.
Page 12 in the book. I'm just going to kind of go through it briefly. Like Peter said, ultimately, so many things have changed that if you're not truly versed in this and you're going to take this exam, you may not fare well. One thing alone, I guess, I'm not sure, I think Peter will talk to you about, is the reference guide. The reference guide, everything is in there, and if you don't know how to navigate through it, you're not going to be able to look up when things have to be inspected, so on and so forth. So, as far as the Part 10 of the study guide, standpipe system must be regularly inspected by a CFF holder. It should be a visual inspection, and you want to look, is this system free of corrosion? Little things like that, that if you pick this up right away, can prevent the problem from happening. No physical damage to the system, and if there is a problem, it should be corrected immediately. You never know when there's going to be a fire. As far as the valves and connections to the automatic water supply, check to make sure they're in the correct position. And that's where all these logbooks come from. There's all checks and balances. And it's also a CYA, cover yourself, to make sure things are done. We had a fire in Brooklyn in the early 90s. They worked on the sprinkler system, put it back in service, but they didn't put the valves back on. 3 firemen were killed. So that's what changes all these codes and laws. As tragedies happen, things change.
So what Tom is pointing out to you is, it sounds like he's teaching you fire safety, which he is, but he's pointing out the parts of the study material that's important for the exam and giving you some background on why it's in there and why it's changed.
That's what I'm going to try and touch base on something, but this is a real brief overview to really get into this whole subject. It's a course. We teach the course at New York Fire Consultants, and it's in-depth course. And if at the back I have some business cards and those residential safety guides, and our contact information is on there. So the valves are very important to make sure they're in the correct position. And anytime your system is out of service, whether it's a standpipe, the sprinkler, or if you have an alarm system in your building, the fire departments should be notified. Does everybody know what the impairment coordinator is? Anybody familiar with that term? Nobody knows that. It's a fairly new term. What that means is basically if something is impaired, and the 3 things we're concerned about would be your standpipe, your sprinkler, or your alarm system. There's steps that you have to take. When the fire department gets on scene, we need to know if there's a situation there. So if your standpipe or sprinkler or alarm system was impaired, you would have to tag it, determine what the problem is, determine how long it's going to be out of service for. If it's your standpipe or your sprinkler, and there's a problem with the fire department connection, there's a disc that has to go on there. So when the fire department pulls up, at a glance, we can tell that there's a problem with that system. As far as the impairment coordinator, that would be the fire safety director. We talk about hotels and office buildings. There's one person who has to always be in charge of that, and that is what they call the impairment coordinator. So that person would notice that there's a problem, make the notifications, tag it, disk it, call the fire department borough dispatcher. And when you call the fire department borough dispatcher, they're going to ask you several questions. You need to have answers for them. What kind of a building are you calling from? What's your location? What's wrong? How long is it going to be out of service for? You got to call your insurance company. You got to call the central station if you have a central station in your building. Then once everything is done and repaired, the company comes and takes care of the problem. You have to make those phone calls and notifications again. Check out the system, make sure all those valves are put back properly. Like we said, we had that fire in Brooklyn. The valves weren't put back. Put the valves back properly, remove the tags and the discs, and then make all those same notifications once again. These are all new changes that came about, and Peter will discuss all that. Okay. As far as your fire department connections, that should be checked out at least once every 5 years. You want to do a hydrostatic pressure test on all your connections. Some major defects that we'll be looking for is an empty tank, a break or leak in the system piping, inoperative or shut water supply valve, or a defective fire department connection. These are all things that, when they're not taken care of, when we get on scene as a fire department, we're going to have an issue here, and this is when tragedies happen. So it's extremely important that you're aware of all that and take care of that issue. The date of all your inspections and repairs must be recorded on the inspection record card. There's a card that should be sprinkler inspection card. This should be near your system. Anytime you do an inspection, anytime there's a problem with it, it should be entered on this card. If you see a minor defect, in your system, you should report to the owner of the building. If the owner doesn't correct it, you should notify the Bureau of Fire Prevention within 30 days if it's not corrected. And all that stuff is done to cover yourself and make sure things are done. If you're going to make a notification to anybody, I would do it in an email. Some sort of written notification. This way you have record that you did make a notification. Okay, as far as the inspection, like I said, you put them on the card. Anytime it was done, it should be posted near the main control valve, and you've got to keep your records for at least 3 years. We also have a logbook, and we sell them at the school. A new logbook should be started every year. And in this logbook, it's broken down by your monthly inspections and all different things that need to be taken care of. You need a new book every year, and these records are kept for 3 years. Okay, as far as the bottom of the page, standpipe system maintenance and inspection. The automatic and non-automatic standpipe should be tested and maintained as per NFPA 25 2000 edition. So those are all new codes that came about since laws have changed. Number 2, they're talking about the fire department connection. You should do a hydrostatic pressure test to make sure that it can withstand the water flow that's going to be put in there. All your fire department connections should be properly labeled on the outside. Red should be for your standpipe, green should be for automatic sprinkler, and if you have a combination system, that should be yellow. As far as the gravity tank, the next page, they're talking about the gravity tank. Each week that pump should be activated, and that gravity tank should fill up at 65 gallons per minute. The gravity tank, basically the way it works is similar to a toilet bowl. There's a pump inside there. As the water is used or the water drops below a certain level, the pump will kick in. It's like a toilet bowl when you flush it. The pump will kick in and bring the water back to the correct level that you should have for your building. Buildings have a certain amount of water in their standpipe and their gravity tanks, and then they should have a reserve. So that pump will only go down so far. And the reserve, that is for the fire pump, so we know when we get on scene, there's at least a minimum amount of water for us to fight that fire. each week you should activate your pump. And if there's an automatic controller, you operate the pump, you should reduce the water and show that it kicks in. By reducing the water, the pump drops, it should automatically kick in the pump. If it doesn't, there's a problem. Okay, the next page talking about standpipe systems. You have your gauges, you want to weekly check that the gauge is properly calibrated to ensure the normal air and water pressure is maintained. There's all sorts of inspections which the reference guide will give you all that information. And unless you know how to read that reference guide, when you go down and sit down for this test, you're not going to pass it. And there's like 15 questions on the reference guide. So right off the bat, you lose 15 if you don't know how to do that. The buildings, annually, prior to freezing weather, buildings with wet pipe systems shall be inspected to verify that everything is operating. And the important thing is do not expose pipes do not expose water-filled standpipes to freezing weather. It has to be 40 degrees, that's the temperature. There's a lot of things that repeat. 40 degrees would be the temperature for the pump room, 40 degrees for your gravity tank. If you have your building under construction and it's not heated, your piping system is going to be dry. When they had the fire at the Freedom Tower last year, it was on the 91st floor, and it took us 40 minutes to fill all that piping full of water because it's a large building. So that's why in a building under construction, there's no water in that system. Okay, talking about on page 4, talking about the gravity tank. The exterior of the tank, supporting structure, the vents, foundation, catwalks, and ladders shall be inspected quarterly. And the reason, I'm not going to go over all the inspections. It's just that when you see a question like that or a statement like that, that's the way it'll be given on the test. It will say, according to the reference guide, how often is the exterior of the tank supporting structures inspected? So what you'd have to do is know how to navigate through the guide, the reference guide, go through that, and then by drilling down, you eventually get to the answer that will say quarterly. Because memorizing all this stuff gets to be a challenge. Okay, on page 5, pressure reducing and relief valves and pumps. The pressure release valve shall be inspected weekly to verify the pressure does not exceed the pressure which the system components are rated. Letter B, booster pumps. Same thing, that should be inspected, visual inspected weekly. And once again, there's your temperature of 40 degrees. The fire pumps, you should do a weekly visual inspection and make sure all the valves are fully open, free of leaks. On the other side, letter C, talking about the water storage tank. Without a supervised water level, it should be inspected monthly. With a supervised water level, it should be inspected quarterly. Once again, these would all be types of those reference guide questions that it would say according to the reference guide, and you have to navigate through. The temperature, 40 degrees. If you don't have a low temperature alarm on your gravity tank, during freezing weather, you want to check that temperature of that tank water daily. Once again, that should be 40 degrees. If you do have a temperature gauge, they'll allow you to do that weekly. On the other side of that, page 6, talking about interior inspection of the steel tanks. Without corrosion, inspected shall be inspected every 3 years. The interior of all of the types of tanks shall be inspected every 5 years. Page 7, talking about dry pipe valves. valve enclosure, heating equipment subject to freezing shall be inspected daily during cold weather. Once again, it should be 40 degrees. It says Celsius next to that, but it should be 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Backflow prevention assemblies. On your standpipe and your sprinkler where the fire pump will hook up, there is a backflow that want the water, domestic water going into that system. That's what that's for. If you have an OSMY, which stands for outside stem and yoke, that should be chained in the open position. The other page, top of the page, talk about fire department connections. Fire department connections shall be inspected quarterly to verify the connections are visible and accessible, the swivels are not damaged, and they rotate smoothly. All this stuff, all these inspections are there that in case there is a fire, that there should be caps on there, that if we have a fire, it's going to work properly. If you walk around and you don't see a cap on, you see what happens. People put garbage in there. Same thing with the fire hydrants. If there's no caps on the fire hydrants, people for some reason think it's a garbage can, they put stuff in there. What happens, we pull up there, there's a fire, it's not going to work, there's going to be a problem. The clappers should be properly operating in your, they call FDC, it used to be called a Siamese, now it's called a fire department connection. Next page, talking about pressure relief valves. Pressure release valves shall be inspected weekly to verify that the pressure downstream of the relief valve fitting to the fire pump discharge does not exceed the pressure in which the system components are rated. If that happens, you could have a break in the pipe. That's the whole idea of keeping the valves properly calibrated. And the bottom, all standpipe valves should be inspected quarterly. Verify that they're in the open position. The next section talks about gravity tanks. This shows a picture of a gravity tank on the front. Basically, the gravity tank, all it is a tank on the roof of your building, and it has water. The way it supplies the water is by gravity. If you have a gravity tank in your building and you open a valve, basically the water is going to flow out. And they can be made of wood, steel, or concrete. And the idea with these tanks is to keep them filled. If you don't keep a wood tank filled, it's going to start shrinking and expanding. You can end up with water leaks. Steel tanks, same thing. Keep them filled, keeps the rust down. And you also have a concrete tank. The way it works, there's no pump. Like I said, the water's just in there. The only pump that's in there would be the pump to refill it. And that pump operates at 65 gallons per minute. If there's a loss of water and that float comes down, it'll fill it up at 65 gallons per minute. It talks about the gravity tank being at least 25 feet above the highest standpipe hose outlet. The reason for that is what they call head pressure. If you have a 30-story building and you have a fire on the 30th floor and you open up that standpipe hose outlet, the water is just going to trickle out. If you have a fire in that same building on the second floor, the water is coming out with more pressure because of all the head pressure coming down. When we have a fire in the building with a standpipe, you'll see the fire department come up, they'll hook up to the fire hydrant, they'll stretch the hose from the fire hydrant to the standpipe or the sprinkler, and the fire truck is a big pump. It's going to pump water into that system. Our hoses supply water at 250 gallons a minute. The 2.5-inch hose. So the gravity tank, there's no pump there. All it's doing, the water is just kind of pouring out. It's not what we need if there's a fire. That's why we need the fire pumps. The water is a backup. Okay, looking at that diagram, you show the 2-inch fill piping. There's that ball float that I discussed. When the water level drops, that ball float will kick in. There's an overflow, because sometimes the ball float doesn't work, just like in a toilet bowl, sometimes things break. The water will flow out. If you happen to see water flowing out, you know there's an issue. Have that corrected. In the winter, if you see ice forming on the tank, that's not good. Either the overflow is not working or there's a leak in the tank. All right, the next page talks exactly what we discussed about the flow of 65 gallons a minute. The fill pump is not necessary if the water pressure is supplied by the city water main and it's able to keep the tank filled with the correct amount of water. The tank itself should be insulated or heated. We don't want that water freezing. We discussed earlier about checking the temperature of that tank. If you have an alarm during freezing weather, it will be weekly. Without an alarm, you want to do a daily check. Make sure the temperature is 40 degrees. Further on down there, it talks about, like I just said, keeping the tanks full of water. And if there is a problem with your gravity tank, you notify the fire department borough dispatcher. It's not 911. You want to call the fire department borough dispatcher. Every borough has a different phone number, different contact number. The next page shows another diagram of the gravity tank. They show you the gravity tank, and looking at the top, working our way down, you see a check valve. That's so that the water does not go back into the domestic water supply. There's a roof outlet manifold. That would be used if we had a fire on the roof. We would hook up our hose to that roof outlet manifold and put the fire out. If any of your systems are down, whether it's your standpipe, your Siamese, your alarm system, your gravity tank, there's two ways that you're going to protect the people in your building. And the two ways are either evacuate your building, which I'm sure you don't want to do, and the other thing is fire guards. So if you need a fire guard, you can call New York Fire Consultants. We can supply you with fire guards. And they have to be there 24/7 until the system is back up and running. Going down the line there, you see the hose outlet. Every floor has that. That's where the fire department will come in. If the fire was on the 10th floor, we come in, we hook up our hose on the floor below. We stretch our hose up to the fire floor, we put out the fire, and then we send members to the floor above that to search for anybody trapped or any fire extension to the floor above. Going all the way down, you see that check valve once again, and then there's an automatic ball drip going out to the fire department connection. We hook up at the fire department connection, and the ball drip valve is so that there's no water laying in there that freezes. If the water freezes in there, we have a fire, it's not going to do us any good, water's not getting through. Okay, the third part is the part 10 study material. This just gives you inspection, testing, and maintenance excerpts. I said earlier, the standpipe must be regularly inspected by the certificate of fitness holder. Take a mark on that card that I showed you. All the valves should be in the correct position. Notify the fire department borough dispatcher when there's a problem. You should put a sign or a tag to let you know what part of the system's out of service. This is the laws that we talked about. It talks about major defects, empty tank, etc. Minor repairs. If not repaired within 30 days, you report it to the fire prevention. All these things, this is what we discussed earlier. This is just kind of a breakdown of the code. So as far as the new certificate of fitness, a lot of them have been combined. So if you had the S11 now is for residential sprinkler, S12 would be for the citywide sprinkler. S13 would be for a standpipe. And these are the certificate of fitness tests you'll have to take with the fire department. For $25 to take this exam. And then S14 would be for a multi-zone. If this starts in January of 2012, so once your CFF expired, you could not renew it, you have to take the new exam. This is the book at New York Fire Consultants. This is the book that we have for the certificate of fitness. S11, S12, S13, S14. And that's all covered in our book. And in the back of the book, there's also this reference guide that I was telling you about. When you take this class, you get this book to take home with you. Of course, and there's the reference guide there to help you answer any question when anything is impaired.
So I was just asking a question about where can we take the classes besides going down to the union? I heard there is a place also the fire department has. Do they have all the instructions over with the new certificate of fitness? Because once at the Hypernia Society, we had that talking about it, and there was a fire chief who was saying that if you take the test and you didn't go for any classes, you will fail because of a lot of coding being changed.
Right. Well, that's what I was trying to get to. Like, when we teach this class, it's a full day of class. So, just kind of gave you a brief overview, and basically saying what you're saying is that it's so in depth that you truly have to go to a class. In the back, I have business cards, and there's those residential guides I explained to you, which would have our contact information on the back, and that's where you can take the test. And I think the Hibernian, I think New York Fire Consultants did train some, I think. Yeah.
It's about 34th Street.
Right, we're right, the Hotel New Yorker. We're in the Hotel New Yorker on the 11th
My question
floor.
is, since we have to take these records and change the books, and I was told the book has to be originally purchased from by the department, now with the copies where registries issues. So this is all available. You just mentioned now in our belt. Where you look at it, or it has to be in the fire department?
Well, I'm sure there are other people who also sell the book, but we sell them. It's called Sprinkler and Standpipe Inspection Record Book. And it'll have the address of your building, the year. Like I said, you need a new logbook every year, but you need to keep these records for 3 years. Okay. The way it's broken down, the table of contents, fire pump testing weekly and annually, water storage tank during the heating tank season, sprinkler inspection record monthly. For every month you have to do inspection. Standpipe monthly inspection. Standpipe and sprinkler deficiencies. The 3- and 5-year tests, and the NFPA inspection, testing, and maintenance. So it's all broken down in here, and it just helps you keep records of all
It
that.
has to be original. It has to be original.
Yes.
And one more question, I'm sorry.
Just one.
In terms of tagging, because I don't know about this business, but right now I'm finding that are we supposed to make our own tags, or is it certain tags by fire department we purchase and just have it on the chain that is anything like, my concern was like a couple weeks ago, my neighbors put some kind of sign, rain, it's gone, is there something that's available for us to purchase?
Yes.
During the night to be visible, I don't get it, I mean, it's really not explaining where we should go to. I think this question answered really helpful.
Right. Okay. Yeah, as far as if your fire department connection outside the building was damaged, impaired, you would put a disc on that. And that's plastic. There's not going to be a problem with that. Okay. Once you call the fire department borough dispatcher, the unit that's nearby will come by and put that fire department a disc on your fire department connection. As far as the tags, you can purchase them. The company that do sell them, contact your alarm company, or look it up online and get a company. And there's different colors. Red will be completely out of service. Green means it's okay. Yellow, it's orange. It's all different colors. Right. So if your standpipe or sprinkler is either out of service or partially out of service, it's red.
I'm just learning about that. My concern was where to get the signs.
Right.
Do they have to be special?
Right. Well, like you said, anything, even when you have a building under construction, the signs, you just can't do them in crayon. Put them up. They got to be legitimate signs. They got to be painted, proper signs. So yes, you can contact an alarm company, or you can go online online and look them up. You can contact New York
Or
Fire
sign,
Consultants.
or sign company.
Or sign company.
Because- Right, like the font has to be a certain style and a minimum size and all that.
Right.
And the sign companies are right on top of that, just as they have, you know, do not use elevator, go to your stairs. The same sign companies, I'm sure.
And if you have any questions, like I said, I have cards that day. Send an email or make a phone call to New York Fire Consultants, and they'll let you know where you can get those signs from, where you can get those discs from, the books, all that stuff. Thanks. You're welcome.
Yes. I just have two basic questions. One is there any differential between commercial and residential on these regulations?
Alex, you want to answer that?
Well, I'll go wait, you know.
Yeah, this regulations, NFPA 25 applies to residential and commercial. So there's no, for signs, you have basically the same signs for residential, except like one and two family dwellings, they do not need a Siamese connection. So you wouldn't have. So it's some design concept is a little different for one and two family dwelling. But once 3 family and up, it's considered commercial in New York City. So you would have to comply like the commercial.
Thank you.
Yes, I have a fire that runs with my small detectors, small alarm, and my tampers. How often do I have to get that inspected? Do I need to keep those records on site? I'm a resident.
Residential.
And I also have a fire department. How often do I have to get that and those water flow alarms and each floor inspected? Right.
Well, in the guide, it tells you how often you have to inspect your pumps. And Peter can answer that question. You want to give more information on that?
To answer your question, the regulations have changed so significantly that, the answer simply will be in the S 12, 13, and 14 study guides. And that's what I was going to talk about next. As Tom mentioned, the licenses that are most significant today are, I'm going to go over them again. S13, citywide standpipe system. That's S13. Okay. Residential sprinkler system is S11. That's residential sprinkler system. Then we have S14 is multi-zone systems. All of those certifications or certificates of fitness are covered in the fire department on the fire department website. So any certificates of fitness you may need for your building, if you are a super, resident manager, handyman, or building engineer requires to obtain any or all of those certifications, you can simply refer to the department of fire department website, and you can look for certificate of fitness tab, and you can look all these regulations up individually for each certificate of fitness. So there is not a quick answer as to what gets inspected, when and how often. Tom has done a very good job of giving you a quick overview. However, this is not a place to give you a detailed information about this. I normally teach the course, as Margie mentioned, in 32BJ for the past 7 years. And the course lasts, for example, the 32BJ lasts for 11 weeks, and it's a 2-hour session once a week. So there is enough information and enough regulations that need to be talked about and learned about for 11 weeks of instruction. So those of you who are able to, send your employees to 32BJ classes, I highly recommend that. Not because simply I work there and it's a great place to be in, but simply because they offer this excellent course in Standpipe sprinkler systems, which does cover any and all requirements that are needed to be learned about for these licenses. So that's if it comes to S12, 13, and 14. What I do want to talk about, what Tom mentioned, is a section of the S12, 13, and 14 study guides. Study guides is the material that anyone and everyone who needs to obtain a certificate of fitness has to be familiar with sufficiently to pass the test. I have students who come to my classes and say, oh, I used to hold the old W12 certificate, and no longer is valid. What do I do now? I went to the fire department, I got a letter from my employer saying that I have the years of experience maintaining the systems, but I still failed the test. Well, you failed the test because the regulations have changed so much that if you do not get yourself familiarized with all those regulations contained in the study guides for S12, 13, and 14, you will not be able to pass the test. And also, as Tom mentioned, a good portion of the test involves the so-called reference guide. I just have a printout here from the fire department website. The reference guide is key to understand because, again, it covers the 3 sections to it: inspection, testing, and maintenance. And this is like the Bible, all the regulations compiled here. And it tells you exactly how often each component and when and by whom has to be tested, inspected, and maintained. So this is key to understand. And guys, again, and ladies who come to classes, I stress this extremely a lot because not only do they have to learn the operation of the systems, understand how water flows from the gravity tank to standpipe sprinkler systems, what type of systems there are, and so on and so forth. Understanding the reference guide is key because you can simply look up and any given component that's going to be listed on the test, and it's going to tell you here what this component is, who can inspect it, and how often it gets inspected. The same with how often it gets maintained, and how often it gets tested, and by whom. So this is key to understand. Again, I know it's not included in this brochure here, but again, you can just go on the fire department website and look it up, and that's where it all is. So key again is to understand this reference guide. People who do not get good understanding of the reference guide that's required for the passing of the exam will not pass the exam. I can tell you that because I have people coming to classes and say, oh, I failed. Well, I know the system, but I failed. Well, you failed again because you may not have understood how to use the reference guide. The reference guide is given to any and every person who takes the test at the fire department. They will hand it to you as an aid for you to help you to pass the test. They recognize that the regulations are so complex these days that people simply cannot memorize all of this. So they give you the reference guide so you can refer to it and find answers to the pertinent questions on the test. One more aspect I want to mention is that Tom mentioned is this person called the impairment coordinator. That's a completely new function which has not existed before the codes were changed and before the NFPA 25 was implemented. It's a key person who will be responsible for making sure that all the fire protection systems in buildings, whether it be commercial or residential, are in compliance. So the fire department person when it comes into the building, they will be looking for this so-called person called now impairment coordinator. Building owner and management by law is required to assign a person who is going to be designated as the so-called impairment coordinator. So you better have such a person on the premises. That person will be coordinating shutdowns with the fire department, reporting them to central station, calling them back if the systems go back online, making sure all the records are in proper order and so on and so forth. In most commercial buildings, the function of the impairment coordinators used to be assumed by fire safety director. The law does not say if the impairment coordinator has to be the same person as the fire safety director. It simply says there has to be a person designated who will be called the impairment coordinator and who will make sure that everything is in compliance. So I just wanted to stress that. And that's a new aspect of this law, which is also covered in the S12, 13, and 14 study guides and similar fitness. They may ask about it on the test as well, because that's a new function that's required to be implemented in buildings. Thank you. Sure. Just come to the mic so I can hear your question, please, and everybody else can hear you.
Peter, I'll just give them the website.
Sure.
Okay. The website, in case you want to look it up, it's www.nyc.gov/FDNY. www.nyc.gov/FDNY. One more point about the reference guide that Peter was talking about. It's also broken down into 3 sections. The first section of the guide talks about the standpipe. The second section talks about the sprinkler system. And the third section talks about, well, actually 4 sections. Then you have the tags, what color tags you want to put on. And then the fourth part, which is in the back, talks about your alarm system if you have a central station hookup. And depending on what is impaired, that's where you go in the guide. But like Peter says, unless you, it's like reading a map. When I teach the class, and sometimes the young people, and I mention a map, they look at me, they don't know what a map is. Everybody has their iPhone, and that's how they get around. But it's like reading a map. You want to go from here to New Hampshire, wherever you want to go, what road you're going to take. That's how the guide is set up. So if you're not sure how to navigate that, you're going to be totally lost.
What actually I'd like to do, while I'm answering the questions, I'll actually pass 2 copies of this reference guide, so you guys can quickly take a look at this and see what it looks like. Yes. I don't think the law specifies. It says that you have to have one on premises. I'm not sure the fire code is actually clear. That's not a specific fitness position. It's a person designated to oversee that the building is in compliance with the current requirements as per the P205. That's what they say. I actually read the code, and I don't think it says that it has to be the commercial residential. It's a person designated to oversee that the building is in compliance.
Would that be like a license?
Too much work.
No, not even. Not even. It's someone in the premises who is designated. The law does not say, to the best of my knowledge, incorrect. That person has to be actually certified in any way. It's again a person who will oversee the operation of the building. Not what I read. Not what I read. It's a person designated.
The building
may
owner
become a building engineer. It may become the fire safety director. But I don't think that's listed here in the code that those persons have to fulfill the function of the permit coordinator. I don't think.
The building owner will designate one person to be the impairment coordinator. Basically, the owner may own several buildings. You can't be on top of everyone in your building. So one person in that building is responsible to make notifications and get this system back up and running.
No, it doesn't have to be. It could be the building super, it could be the building engineer, it could be the handyman, or any other person that the building owner designates. Again, in the eyes of the law, the building owner is responsible for designating the permit coordinator. If the building owner does not designate the permit coordinator, the building owner becomes responsible.
We have a representative from the school at Thomas Shortman, 33J, and I'm sure what we want to make sure is if an owner designates a building worker as an impairment coordinator, one, they better know about it, and 2, what kind of personal liability risk are we taking on as an employee? So from a management standpoint, there's a lot, because I can see some employees saying, I'm not going to take this on, and to what degree is that a direct order or not?
Well, when we teach these classes, Margie, we teach them for the fire safety director, just for an example. Fire safety director for a hotel or an office building, and it's a class that they take, and they take our test, they pass it, and they have to take the city exam and pass that, and then they have to get certified in their building. The city will actually come out and certify them in the building, and we go out to the building to do an on-site training for these people. Then they become certified, they have a certificate of fitness, and they become the impairment coordinator. So there's a lot involved, a lot of knowledge that people should have. And like Peter said, and we both said, taking this exam, you really need, there's a lot of information you need to have. And if anything today, you can understand how much information is there.